All right, so hello to anyone out there tuning in. Here is our first look at what will be our Hyundai Elantra 2007 Derby car. So she is pretty promising looking to the stock Derby guy that I am referring to. She looks, as solid as she can be. Inside those front wheels, of course, there's rust. You can even see this one was pressed up against a little bit there, and there's one over here as well, just a small one on the fender. But Derby car wise, again, will be stock compact, nice size, smaller car. So I'm finishing the big one over there, the Impala, kind of getting Derby strip day here, beautiful day, and I'm got my summer fireworks tent job done for the summer, so diving into some cars, so we're ready to go before we go camping. But this one here, she runs good. The only issue, if you will, other than she's just not really roadworthy anymore, is this one. It's in neutral. You can see it will not go into park, so the transmission but it goes in reverse fine, drive fine. So neutral, start and stop it, and just pull the e-brake whenever you want it to sit. Otherwise, she again, you never really know with these stock Derby cars. You start smashing around. Lift the hood up here. But I would say she seems solid. Inside, I said I've never had Hyundai or Elantra or anything like that, but inside she's still got the stock converter on it, and we're going to leave all that there, which as that's getting pressed in, it's kind of a nice wall there, so kind of protecting the different components, which it's tough to see with my camera, but all the critical stuff is kind of back behind that. So of course, we'll take off the plastic, the air filter, fuse box, see if we can get that in there, get this battery box kind of holder here, unbolt it, get it out of there. So if you get pressed in, it's not diving anything important, but get that fuse box if we can in some. But pretty much right where that air box is, I imagine that big part there, I'll just leave that right past the sensor. I don't like to unplug those, and sometimes it's messed with the engine. But yeah, it runs good. Again, for a Derby car, I would say it runs real good. So promising indeed. But yeah, we're starting to dive into it. So today here, just going to get out the seats, kind of all the inside stuff, probably get to the floor in that, and just kind of start diving into it. So this is our 2007 Hyundai Elantra. We are excited for it. We are planning on running this one at Clarion County on July 29th, I believe it is their compact stock class 2023. We're excited. We'll see what we got as we dive into her. So back at her here, just want to do a quick little update, and those people that Derby regularly tear cars apart, they know this stuff. It's pretty basic, but you can see we got the seats out, just some simple bolts front and back. We'll rip the carpet out here in a moment. Got the bottom of the seat here, which is usually some sort of a lever. This one I pushed in and then kind of lifted up to get it out of there on both sides. The back here, I'm in a little bit of standstill right now. I'm gonna have to probably look up online. My trunk only works on the button on the key, and the other one's damaged, evidently doesn't work. So the key's the only way I can open the trunk, the other button, trunk button that is, and it doesn't work. So I'm going to try to swap the battery, that is, and be able to get into the trunk so I can unbolt from the back the seats. I don't believe I can unbolt them from the front, the back seats here, but we'll see. But just wanted to show again with the doors how I do it. There's usually a screw or two. You can see this one was in the latch as well as in the door handle area. That's usually where they are. All four doors were like that. But then this one was super nice and easy. It had just these little rubber areas that pop down, one in the back, two in the front. And again, you slide the window down a little ways to where it's lined up. This one has a Phillips screw. This one up here you can see has just a bolt. Undo those, and then you just kind of pull the window up and out. Simple, clean, easy, and you're not making a mess. And then again, I just set them aside in a pile. Kind of started a pile over there by the tree at the edge of our property, and at the end, whenever I'm ready to scrap it, I just put them back in, so you don't have to worry about them. Letting the windshield as well as the rear window get heated up by the sun. Let the sun hit it, gets that glue that's kind of holding them down good. And then again, I use like a paint chip tool and a hammer and just kind of edge around until I can fold it over at the bottom and then finish out that. So going to finish tearing apart the inside, get to the windshield here then, and moving along. So just a small look here at where we're going to finish. We have a rec soccer league tonight. My kids play, and I help coach, so we're getting right ahead of that. We'll jump to the windows tomorrow after we let them heat up for a little bit. But got the windows out again, very simple. Just make a pile. Be careful though, if you leave them set out and the sun hits them, they will burn your grass. So I usually put them out against a tree or into the weeds. And then this rear seat, boy, was it a son of a gun. So the key dongle trunk button did not work. So you're like, okay, no big deal. Just take the key to the back and open it that way. Well, the problem is this car's transmission is out of alignment. And while reverse neutral drive works perfectly fine, it does not go all the way into park. So it's in neutral, which means the key will not turn all the way back and out. So I had to try to figure out how to get into it. And it was a bit of a nightmare. So you can see here, the way I ended up having to do it, because I could not figure out where to get to these bolts, is I had to rip the top of this back part off, cut the seat belts and ripped it off. And then I was able to access, here is from the back of the trunk, you pull these and it releases there, which lets your seats down, which whenever you're looking through the trunk, that's very easy to get to. There you can see it says pull, same thing on the other side, but I had to be able to get to that. So I had to rip that top back off. So once I got that off, then I was able to get that seat down, and then I crawled in, popped the trunk, and was able to easily let this last one down. And then again, I'll be able to easily unbolt those from the back. So we're gonna finish that now. Again, windows are out of the doors. Trunk here, just took the lights out real quick in the trunk hood as well as in the back. We'll undo all of these for the back bumper as well right before we get into the windshield tomorrow. While the windows heating up, I'll do that. But nice trunk, not a huge car, but a nice looking trunk now that it's actually open. Again, we'll crimp up that bottom, take a jack and just kind of keep pressing up, especially the middle, but especially this back part, to try to get it to fold up and in a little bit better. That seems to work. And had a really nice spare tire as well as the styrofoam and everything for the jack. Things like new, no rust or any water ever got to it. So finishing up here for the day, almost ready to get to the glass, and then we'll take out the airbags, the steering wheel, cut out the carpet, and that's it for the inside. Break the glass and the back window, cut out or kind of chip out, if you will, with my paint chipper tool and hammer, the main windshield, and then we'll pull her back in and look to finish up in the motor. Coming along. So back at it here the next morning after we finished the night before. We're pretty much all done with the inside. Just the carpet left I'll cut out real quick and carefully. Don't cut any wires as you're cutting it out with my utility knife. But again, just wanted to show, if you're not someone that's done this or you're thinking about doing this, you know, keep your mess as little as possible, you might say. Here, for example, is my ceiling just kind of padding that they have in the cars. You know, unplug the couple lights, undo. It's usually Phillips screws that have the sun visors, the handles and things like that in, and then it just kind of pulls down and out. And then I kind of pile stuff on it and go from there. You can see we did get the seats out, those son of a guns, as I couldn't get into the trunk because of this car's unique situation. But wanted to point out real quick before we pull her out and heat her up in the sun, then we'll tear out the windshield as well as bust the rear window and clean it up. The airbags, I have not done my steering wheel or my passenger yet, but these are very common. Again, this is a 2007, so not even a super new one, but these are your kind of roof airbags. Very common. This car actually had, this Elantra had airbag plugs under the seat, so I didn't even look to see if they're in the driver and passenger seat. Sometimes they are in the newer vehicles, but here I just wanted to show, so simple. Again, always make sure your battery terminals are off and the battery is dead. A lot of people say you also want to cross your positive and negative, your wires. It kind of fully drains out any possible kind of stagnant energy sitting in there, but I usually don't, it's fine. But the plugs, very simple. So there is the end, and it's usually in the back of the car in every car I've done. But so simple to do. So here is the plug. Don't just start ripping at it. Every one of these, in essence, and there's usually always one I haven't got to yet right here inside the kind of between the two doors as well. But you just carefully take a flathead screwdriver. I get under the back here and it just pops up, this yellow part, maybe about an inch. And then I just take needle nose, grab it on the side, and it pops right out. So super simple, safe, and then it is out. So here she is. Again, the roof, you can see it, just a little bit of that padding I'll rip out here. It was stuck in between the padding and the roof there that I have sitting in the floor. The seat's just sitting in there so I can drive. I will make sure my Impala Some of the cars also have a sensor in the door, as well as, of course, in front of the motor. Haven't got to the motor yet, but I'll double check that. And then I'll leave this kind of inner door part here because it's just making the door tougher, not only my driver's side, but all four of the doors. Some of the cars I've done have that, some don't. Again, want to make that door as tough as possible. So I'll leave those in after I make sure there's nothing behind it that I need to unplug. And I'll also unplug in between here. Again, unplug things, put power back to it, turns on, everything runs good, you're good to go. You unplug something and nothing's working, plug it back in. I've done that before, and then figure it out. But I'll unplug that so that, again, the back half of the car is dead. And you can see there is my tank. Really nice to see the stock fuel cell there in front, way in front of the rear axle, so no concern at all there. My Impala I just ran again. If you watch that, the cord ran back just inside the front of the trunk, and that created a little bit of a headache as I was getting smashed up at the end. I had to start to look to protect my front, or my rear that is, instead of just my front, as the back end was so beat up, but it was so bent in, the whole tank was starting to move. So this one not as big, but we're pretty excited. And the only other thing, I have everything unscrewed here, as my cats help me out. Just need to get inside the rear wheels here. There's a couple bolts that are facing backwards that are kind of annoying with the wheel on. Those hubcap covers I'll take off, so I'll just loosen those, take those off, take the wheel off, and easily get into that. And then it's time to break stuff. Break the windows. Again, we'll heat it up first, get that kind of glue hot, makes it easier to peel out. We're getting close. So with what I was just saying there, as I was finishing here, about to pull it out, I said, no, I'm gonna throw this in the video too. Pulling out the carpet again, you know, just carefully kind of pull it up. Sometimes there's like a little clamp or something on the side. This one had one there, but you can pretty much pull it up. And then I just use a utility knife to kind of carefully cut it down the middle. And then I take out the other side. But again, with airbags, you know, your killed power to the battery, that is. And I would at least let it sit a couple minutes. But in particular in these doors, so my old one, the Derby car I just ran, the Impala, had an impact sensor in the door there. This one here, you can see once you pull off the plastic, this one's got it, and you know it's an impact sensor, not only because it looks like this, but those yellow plugs, that's kind of the giveaway. So you see this one's right on the door here. And again, the airbag was right here that was running across the side of the car that would be deployed there. Well, we certainly don't want the airbag deploying, but running the stock fuel cell, whether it's under the car or in my Derby tank, I have the M&M Boys Derby tank, you put the stock fuel cell in, you don't want the computer getting signals that you were in an accident, and I believe it will kill the stock fuel cell power to it, because if you're in an accident, don't want fuel leaking. I believe on most, if not all cars, that's what happens. So again, with these passenger side, I don't need it. I just unbolt, and then again, just carefully unplug it. Throw away the sensor. Don't throw away the sensor until after. Again, I always put power back to the car and then kind of run it, make sure everything works right as I'm unplugging things. Airbag sensors, though, impact sensors, never had an issue with that. I don't believe you'd have to remove the airbags from the steering wheel or the passenger side here if you unplug everything. I always do anyways, just to be safe, and I also don't want an airbag blowing up on me like you've seen in derbies. So there's one in the back here, again, just has a little lever. Once I unbolt this, I'll just pop that out with my screwdriver and then pop it off like I just mentioned. And then this one here is real simple to unplug. So just things like that to look for if you're running the stock fuel cell and on the stock computer and wiring and everything, if you don't know. And there you have it. Unplug the main wires that run to the back doors, so there's nothing there. It could get pinched, caught, or anything like that and freak the computer out. Unplug the from the seat belt there, the one hanging there, which again is a simple unplug like I showed earlier, and then there's that one for the impact sensor. And we have a dead car from there back. Don't have to worry about it. Nice. And with that dead car idea, I always pull the wires in just a little bit, as again, you'll get slammed in the side some. Want to keep those wires as clean as possible. Usually at least pull them off there. Same thing back here, off here. Pull them into the car at least, I don't know, half a foot. That way they're not getting tangled up as you're getting smashed up. So just a quick show. Again, this is not only meant to be kind of entertaining, I guess, if you have any interest in making derby cars and stuff like that, these simple videos I make. But in particular, I know whenever I was first starting, I knew nothing. It was these videos I desperately searched for because I just did not know anything about cars. So if you are someone that does not know, you know, well, how do you remove the glass or how would you do it? This is how I do it, and I would say this is the best method, at least for myself. I know they make like your Rural King or your Home Depot or, you know, the different stores like that, Lowe's, etc. They sell, it's like a piano wire that has 2 handles, and you start it and one on the outside, inside, and you kind of cut through that rubber, which, by the way, again, let it sit in the sun. It was like butter. This one, arguably one of the more simple ones to come out in the front. But mine kept breaking, and then in particular with myself, I usually am doing everything myself. The wife doesn't want to help, the kids are too young, so I took that thing back. It's like, this thing's garbage, I'm not doing it. How I do it on the front windshield, I have a flathead screwdriver, which is usually more of a, once I start it with I call it my paint chipper here, get started under, I usually put the screwdriver in there just to act as like a holding it up a little bit, and then I will work with my just hammer and my chisel, as I call it, just down the side, tap a little, change a little, try to keep it as close to the edge without cutting into this, because that just kind of stops you. But you see how you're cutting the rubber out that's holding, or the glue in essence, that's holding the rubber of the windshield to the car. Now it will break, that's why you'll see I just have an old tarp, which is actually ripped and really old, as well as just an old rag underneath. There will be some splash out, of course, you know, wear clear glasses and some sort of glove. The tiny shards even, I mean, they're incredibly sharp, and whenever I'm done, I'll get the shop vac out here and sweep everything up. I'll even sweep that top tiny stuff off of the car, but I'm trying to kind of keep everything in the car or the immediate surrounding. And what I'll do is I'll pull the car off at the end, and I'll kind of pick the sides up of the tarp and rag and get all the glass to the middle, and then I'll sweep that up. And then I usually go off into the weeds and just shake the tiny particles that might still be on it. The windshield, though, you see my pile there, we have a way of disposing of the windshield. So again, you could just put it, as I mentioned in my last post-run video, set it aside, save it, and then after you're done, set it in the car first, and then just start piling all the stuff back in it, all the stuff that you're going to scrap with the car. As again, that's, you know, fair game. There's no salvage yard. It's going to be like, well, you can't put that stuff in it. Well, like, everything in it came with the car. I just stripped it out first. So you could do that with the glass. Say you shop vac up all the glass. Again, you could just throw it into a garbage bag and throw it away, or again, could dump it at like the bottom. I would leave it in a bag if you do that, but you're piling everything on top, and they're not going to be unpiling the car until you're long gone. But if you're going to keep going back, I would at least leave the glass in a bag, and the glass as much of a whole piece in the bottom, so they can quickly dispose of it there as they do with their other cars. But yeah, that's how I do the front. And you'll see after I get down almost to the bottom, I fold it over, and it just will, as you can see, just break right through. And again, it kind of splinters. That's why you just have to be careful. And then I'll set it aside in the weeds. You can see that is my Impala main windshield, as well as the tiny little ones there. I had one shatter on me whenever I was taking it apart, and then just kind of the rubber from everything else. And then again, I'll take my hammer and chisel, and I'll just carefully cut this out, set it on top. That's what most of that small stuff is there. The back window, there's no way around it. You just take a big hammer, hit it in the middle, and then just kind of carefully break it all again into the car. I'll sweep all this up with my shop vac. And then again, same thing, my chisel and my hammer, I'll just carefully go around, take the rubber out, and then start sweeping everything up. So again, those people that derby enough know how to do it. But if you're someone that is looking to do it and you're like, well, what do I do with the mess? Again, I make, if you will, an organized pile of my stuff. You could even make an organized pile of your glass, kind of like I did there. Put it all back in the car. I'd put the glass in first, pile all this stuff on top after you're done, take it to scrap, and your yard looks nothing different. Maybe you have a little bit of dead grass like I had back there where I had the last pile stacked, but no harm, no foul. So if you're someone new to it, a couple tidbits I've learned over the years, I think that's the best way to do it. And just to throw with this idea of windows, again, these are all of my door windows I have carefully set aside. If you put them in the yard, the sun going through it will burn your grass, something fierce, so I wouldn't do that. But just set it aside, and then again, I put it back in the cart. Don't ever break those door windows. They're super easy to get out. Even if your window is powerless, or like it doesn't go up or down anymore, you can usually once you open the inside of the door out, you can take the guts, the rail or whatever it is that's making it go up and down the window, loosen that up, and then you can get down to where you can get at the bolt and pull the window out. So don't make any of a mess with those because you don't need to. The other stuff, make a mess. So there is our finished product. We got the glass all swept off the top. Again, even that light film on top of the hood and roof, definitely want to sweep that up. big old shop vac does the job. Haven't pulled it off the tarp here yet, and then again I'll just funnel that toward the middle, sweep that up, and then just kind of shake it off in the weeds or in the woods, any light glass that still might be on it. But one more thing I wanted to mention with this video before we jump to finishing what we're going to finish up front and underneath. With doing this, I mentioned you don't only want to get the glass hot, but you also want to keep an eye on the weather and even the moisture that starts to set in late in the evening. You do not want any part of that while you still have even the film glass on top. I had a Derby car one time, it was going into the evening. I didn't even think of it. It was starting to get cooler. Where we're at, it gets damp pretty significantly because we're kind of at a low elevation, and it is a nightmare when it is wet trying to get that, even the tiny pieces of glass, it just sticks to everything, and it is a nightmare. So keep an eye on not only the weather, which humid late July here in Pennsylvania. A thunderstorm just missed us as I was gone. I can still hear it now, rumbling. Just went around us and then slammed the town just east of us. But definitely don't want anything wet to deal with while you're doing that. There's a rumble there. I don't know if the camera picked it up. But the last thing we're going to do before we pull it off and then sweep up that last little bit, we're going to drill our holes up front. So I usually do one up here that I try to go around the rebar, and then one kind of close to the side, kind of anchored there. They allowed 4 up front for pretty much all the derbies in our area. So I'll drill those 2. Drill my hood as well, which that is pretty simple, falls right in to the car. And then back here, I actually don't need to drill anything. I'm going to use that where the headlight was, or the tail light was rather, along with the side on the trunk, and I'm just going to use my, again, free 99 seat belts to not only secure the trunk there, but then we'll do the doors last, but with that and duct tape. But I do that at the Derby. So last little bit of cleanup out here, and then we'll do one more look at what we're going to do under the hood, and she's about ready to go. All right, so we are back inside. Got the front holes drilled in the hood. Didn't get my hood center hole there drilled yet, as it is really starting to rumble around us. So I wanted to make sure I had everything cleaned up before it looks like we're going to get some weather. We're back inside my father-in-law's pole barn here, this stall that he doesn't mind us using. So here's the final kind of steps, and then we'll give a quick final look before we slap whatever paint design on. We got 2 different ideas. Not sure what we're going to do on this old girl. But the back end, all we're doing is the trunk. I'll press up again with my Pittsburgh jack, kind of try to lift it up and around the back and middle in particular, so that the back end, got my light here in my hand, folds kind of up and in, especially the smaller trunk. You'll notice did have a spare with this tire, and I had a spare I had kept, so we are going to put those on there. Not a lot of a rear axle there, so the small tires, again, hopefully we're crushing up and in. The tank is pretty far inside, but that's something I'll easily be able to keep my eye on. Kind of right there, that kind of crease is where, if I'm pressing up to that point or more, the car's kind of deforming, kind of like my Impala did, then I'm gonna have to turn around and start slamming at the front end. Up front, these wheels just gonna take off the hubcap cover there, and then those will stay on. They're kind of a heavier duty all-weather tire, so not a bad deal. Pretty good tread. They're kind of wearing funny, like the car was out of alignment, but for Derby, not an issue there. And then up front, so here's the plan. We'll see how this goes. So here, the air box, we're going to just unbolt that. You'll see here we have the computer kind of attached to it. So unbolt, there's 2 there and 2 there, which that one down there in the bottom, there we go, is going to be a son of a gun. But get that guy out of there so that I can not only move that computer in off the strut, but in particular the fuse box. I'll unbolt there as well as there and kind of get it inside, spray foam kind of between the 2, get them set in here sitting above the transmission, but in particular get spray foam around the outside here, and that'll allow not only the fuse box to be just a little bit inside, but also to kind of move around a little bit instead of being bolted in if I get pressed into the side. You can see how the wiring kind of runs up through there. I mean, not too much you can do if you're going to run stock here. Oh, get my camera to focus. Not really working. There we go. Had my light. There's the wire running up in under the fender. Again, running stock wiring, not much to do. I mean, sometimes they say, you know, and I've done it before, if you have old radiator hose, kind of wrap around it, but I probably won't do anything because of how high it is in the fender there. Should be all right. This battery box, absolutely unscrewed, because you will see right there is the transmission shifter. the cable that is. And I've had a run, unfortunately, had a good PT Cruiser ready to go at Venango, was it 2 years ago, left the battery box in similar to this, got hung up in the middle after a rainstorm. Guy just got into the corner of it, pressed it into my shifter, and I was pinned in drive. So I'm sitting there with a fresh Derby car just pinned in drive. I mean, I tried to send it forward as long as I could, but then I ended up getting stuck in the corner. Unfortunate. So we'll take that out, take out this here, the other side of the just kind of air box set up there. And again, I don't have to worry about anything as it's kind of got the honeycomb set up there. And then again, don't ever forget, so this doesn't have much of a core support. Here are our impact sensors right there. See if I can get the, it's gonna be tough. But on the inside of the frame rail, again, this one over here, I think it's better to see. Let me see if I can get the camera. So there, one second here. There we go. You can see the yellow again, not to mention the impact sensor. Get it to focus. There we go. Bolted to the inside of the frame rail. Again, I'll unplug that, and that baby is dead. So there's one on that frame rail, one on the other frame rail. So we'll unhook that. Over here, just take out the washer fluid here. The coolant is right there, of course. Don't want to remove that. Probably just try to get a little spray foam in and around that. I'm not totally sure yet. Once we get everything out, I don't think we can move it. That thing is really kind of hung out there in right behind where the light kind of socket was. But I don't think there's much we can do with that. Just kind of spray foam likely up and behind that. We'll see. I believe we are going to take off this radiator fan because not a lot of space between the two, and I really don't need that fan. I mean, I just don't. I mean, you unbolt or unplug rather. Right here's the plug. Unplug it, and then it just, there's like one bolt here with this hose sitting on top, and then it just kind of lifts out. So I think we're going to remove that so we have that extra space. Don't even know if the thing runs. And then the last thing, again, your transmission. See if I can get it to focus. Right there is where the one transmission line comes out and comes up to the top here of the radiator to keep it cool. And then the other one is right beside it. So there's 1 and 2. So again, we'll loop the lines once this part of the air box is out. It'll be easier to do that, but we'll loop that. And she's pretty much done. The only other thing, we'll take off the horn there in the center, but here, these like clamp type, I don't know if they're a toe thing, but they're just bolted at the top. The one over here is easier to see right now. We'll unbolt that so we don't possibly get hung up. Get my finger out of there. And possibly get ourselves in trouble. Otherwise, we'll try to pull the wiring again back in as far as we can, duct tape or black tape rather, and zip tie it. Again, in the battery, here's my negative. I'll just tape this up here. It's bolted to the side, but I'm just gonna use my U-bolts and my AutoZone, again, wiring. I'll run through that, bolt the U-bolt, or bolt the AutoZone battery cable that is with the U-bolt to the negative. That's same thing for the positive, and that'll run in to my battery box, my Smith Metalworks box, which of course I'll put right over there. Simple fix there. And then the only other thing underneath is the muffler. They already took the catalytic convert off this, but there's a small section from here back. We'll just cut those off and she's ready. Now that I say it out loud, it sounds like a little bit more than I originally thought. I thought I was nearing the end, but nothing too complex. Probably about 6, maybe 7 hours in right now. Focus here. Probably about 6-7 hours in, probably another hour and a half, we'll have everything completely done. So I'd say 8-9-ish hour build. Again, stock, pretty simple, no big hiccups, other than that rear seat with the trunk being stuck. Probably add another hour onto my time there. So one final look under the hood before we wrap this kind of first looking build video up, and then we'll get our paint design on and do a final look before we load her on the trailer. But was able to get all that plastic out of here, and you can see this computer here is just now sitting there, and the fuse box I was able to get to where I'll have a little bit of space there, so I'll kind of put foam spray in around the strut there of the fuse box as well as over here. I'll actually be able to leak it. See that gap there? I'll leak foam spray down in, there we go, and over top of that wiring. Probably put a can in there to fill that just so there's a little bit more kind of around that wiring. There's not really anything else I can do with the stock setup. Battery lines, again, very simple. Just took a U-bolt and ran through, tightened down with my AutoZone battery lines that then run in. I have 2 so that I can get easy length into the car. The negative, it was a little small, so I didn't get my kind of this top on. I like to run it over the wires, the U-bolt, and then kind of clamp it down real good. This one's pretty well clamped, but I'll kind of really tightly pull the tape down over that wire this way to make sure not only electrical tape everything so that nothing could possibly touch any metal and ruin your day, but also just to make sure that wire is in constant contact. Now, black tape real well that as well. And we'll pull the simple loose lines in here. Again, got the impact sensor unplugged there, the yellow plug. Just kind of pull those in as far as we can over the frame rail. As again, you can see they kind of run down over, so I'll just kind of pull it in as much as I can. Just kind of is what it is. I am going to leave on this. I thought about removing it, but the starter's kind of tucked up under, so I'm going to leave that there so that it's kind of pressing against the guard there of the catalytic converter that's still on, the stock there, converter that is, and kind of make like a barrier, you know, not really much core, not even the rebar itself is very big. I'm not sure how tough that guy is, but we're going to leave that like that. The coolant, a little bit of a, it is what it is. It's really kind of exposed on the outside of the frame rail, but we're just going to leave it there. So foam spray a little around that. Foam spray, of course, around that, and in particular around this, so that's nice and solid. But again, the foam spray, it can kind of move back and forth, but it'll grab it together, tape up really well my lines. And then the only other thing that, if you've never done it, in the back here, we're just going to lift again the trunk. So I'll take my jack and put it right in the center, kind of pick up the car to kind of try to press in the center, maybe take a sledge, and in particular around the back part here, lightly pound in around there to weaken that a little bit, and then I'll kind of go around with the jack in the corners to try to get it lifted, but in particular the back part lifted, so hopefully it rolls forward with the car. So that is it. Just a couple final tidy things up. The airbags pulled out of the steering wheel and the side dash there, which the steering wheel always has. Either you got to stick like a small piece of metal in there. This one actually has like a star screw, it seems, holding it in there. And then over here, there's different ways to get out the airbag for the passenger side. Sometimes it's as easy as going up under and where the glove box was and unplugging it. This one though, I'm probably gonna have to, you can see here I have the side, unbolt here the side so I can just pick up the dash a little bit and get to those wires and unplug them. Other than that, which again sounds like more than, than I thought whenever you say it out loud, she's about ready to go. So that wraps this one up. We'll get to the final build. Meant to show this and forgot. So there's my tranny line looped, and you can see that piece exposed. I usually am able to get more than that covered up, but this is that piece, just your local hardware store keys. So you can see I've got from there up on each hose in and then tightened down with my clamp there, so should be more than fine. But that is our tranny looped. I know different Derby product makers make them, but this little guy, $350 at a hardware store, 2 cheap clamps. Just carefully slide it as much as possible. Usually I can get it almost too dead in the middle. This one I got to about there. But that's our tranny line looped. I'll probably just leave it hang there so it again can move around a little bit if you get pressed.